I had to know the secret behind why teen comedies peaked in the 2000s. So I watched over 100 teen comedy movies from several different eras, read a ton of their screenplays, and took notes on everything. You're gonna see exactly why teen comedy movies from the 2000s were better than every other decade. And it's not just as simple as they had better actors, or they weren't politically correct, because it goes much deeper. And one movie provided the framework that would change everything. But first, we had to survive the worst era in cinema's history, the Hays Code era, which took place between 1934 and 1968. Because during this time, movies like Superbad, American Pie, and Eurotrip would literally be banned from playing in movie theaters. Before the MPAA system, we had the Hays Code, which was essentially a movie dictatorship. Movies would either get the thumbs up and be allowed to play in theaters, or they would get the thumbs down and effectively be censored from the general public. The Hays Code was essentially a set of rules that said no swearing, no drugs, no interracial couples, no gay people, oh, and no excessive kissing or sex. So that meant you couldn't do this. Or this.
I guess I'll be going now.
No. I'm not done, Nadia. I've got reserves.
And you definitely couldn't do this.
I'm going to perform a procedure on you called milking the prostate. It's an anally induced ejaculation.
But we eventually got out of the Stone Age, and boy did things explode. The 70s to early 80s weren't quite to the level of the 2000s, but they were a ton of fun. In fact, I'm sure you love many of the teen comedies from this era, and you probably missed out on quite a few that you'd really enjoy. We really took things from one extreme to the other, as we had a host of low-budget teen comedies that really took liberty with sex and nudity no longer being prohibited, such as Cheerleaders, which is literally about a bunch of cheerleaders sleeping with football players, or Screwballs, which is about a ton of high school students whose one mission in life is to see the virgin at their school naked. As you could probably tell, these movies were really limited in how good they could actually be. I mean, if the plot of Screwballs alone wasn't enough, the virgin's name is Purity Bush, and one of the main guys' names is Melvin Jerkovsky, because he had a knack for, well, I'll let you put two and two together. Films like these really flooded the market and would become known as T&A films. And as far as what T&A stands for, I don't want to get in trouble with the algorithm, so I'm just going to put these two emojis up on screen. Don't get me wrong, these movies had way more laughs than modern comedy movies, but they were also just borderline soft porn. We did, however, get at least a few more respectable teen sex comedies during this era, all of which were mid-budget, which include Animal House, which got a rare 4-star rating by Roger Ebert, Porky's, which would go on to be the highest-grossing film in Canada for multiple decades, and Revenge of the Nerds, a film that is so controversial that it effectively got canceled and is near impossible to find nowadays. All of these films were super fun, but classless. They often broke the rules of reality and would take you out of the film due to their reliance on over-the-top gags. But they did, however, plant the seeds for the 2000s teen comedy renaissance. That was with one exception. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, a film that was so ahead of its time that it's even better and more relatable than virtually every other teen comedy ever made, even from the 2000s. But we'll get more into why this is in a bit, because things were about to change and overcorrect. But I promise, this isn't anywhere near the level of stupidity as the Hays Code era. I mean, you could at least swear, light up a joint, and maybe even have a gay character. And while we were still a ways away from hitting the level of the 2000s teen comedies, the mid-80s to late 90s had its fair share of classics. This was largely due to one man who completely took over the genre. His name was John Hughes, and you've seen, or at least heard of his impressive run of teen comedies, which includes 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Career Opportunities. Yeah. He wrote and or directed every single movie I just listed. And the crazier part, those movies don't even make up 20% of his filmography. These films were different from the previous era because they focused on coming-of-age themes, but completely removed the graphic sexual aspects, and instead took a more wholesome, classy, and romantic approach. But like the 70s and early 80s, they often broke the rules of reality and got a bit too cartoony at times for my liking. But there were definitely more grounded in reality films during this era not made by Hughes, including Cheese all that and Can't Hardly Wait. I know it sounds illegal to say, but I honestly enjoyed these movies more than Hughes' films. But they too kept it clean and conservative with respect to sex. Were these films better than the ones of the 70s and the early 80s? I think it depends on personal taste and also the kind of mood you're in. I would say they had good aspects and bad aspects, but they still missed key components that made the 2000s so special. It really felt like sex in teen comedies was done forever. Like the antics of the 70s had overstayed their welcome and ruined it for all of the future eras. That was until July of 1999 when everything would change and set the stage for the 2000s. The greatest era for teen comedies. So sex was what saved teen comedies? Well, not really. Kinda, sorta. You'll see what I mean. On July 9th, 1999, American Pie would be released. A movie about four best friends who make a pact to lose their virginity by prom night. This movie wasn't just a massive risk due to looking at the teenage years through a sexual lens, but it also featured a no-name cast, a first-time writer, and a first-time director. But it wasn't just their dick exploding, because off of an $11 million budget, the film grossed over $230 million at the box office and completely started a new era for teen comedy. Just like that, it was raining raunchy teen comedies. You couldn't avoid them if you tried. Road Trip, Dude, Where's My Car, Euro Trip, Mean Girls, Not Another Teen Movie, Van Wilder, Sex Drive, Superbad, hundreds of straight-to-DVD raunchy teen comedies. Good, bad, and everything in between. But I know this is starting to sound a lot like the 70s and 80s, except there were major differences separating the 2000s from that era. Because we went from sexuality being portrayed in Animal House as a bunch of sorority girls getting naked and pillow fighting on a Friday night, and a bunch of co-eds going naked bowling, and one of them getting a bowling ball stuck to his dick because someone accidentally threw it at him in screwballs, to Jim, a curious virgin in American Pie, using an apple pie as a device because he's told that's what a vagina feels like. Or three friends watching porn together on a Saturday night. Do you notice a difference in how grounded in reality the American Pie and Superbad examples are compared to Animal House and Screwballs?
Well, we'll just tell your mother that we ate it all.
But it wasn't just the realism of sex from these movies. If it felt like these movies were actually real, a lot of them actually were to an extent. Because movies like Superbad and American Pie were actually based on real-life high school experiences. The previously mentioned Fast Times at Ridgemont High from the 80s that I promised I'd get back to feels very much like a 2000s teen comedy because its realism is so insane to the point that it doesn't even feel legal. Screenwriter Cameron Crowe actually wrote the film based on his experience going undercover as a high school student many years after he had graduated from high school. Hell, even Road Trip and Mean Girls were loosely based on Todd Phillips and Tina Fey's experiences growing up. You probably notice, whether you're 16 years old or 60 years old, that the teen comedies from this era just feel more relatable and honest than the teen comedies of the past and present. And that's not only because of the honesty with sex and overall realism of the worlds, but because they showcase people we all know growing up and universal experiences such as social hierarchy, virginity, and self-discovery. The point is, the teen comedies of the 2000s really took the best of the 70s, 80s, and 90s to the next level, while leaving the worst behind. But this era started to fade, ending around 2010 with Easy A, which is what I would call the last hurrah. We did, however, actually get one of my favorite teen comedies of all time 8 years later in 2018 with Blockers, but let's be honest, that movie was a unicorn. So what happened? Why couldn't we just keep up the momentum from the 2000s? These movies were loved, and they were doing great at the box office. Well, it wasn't a change in preferences, social media, or even political correctness. The biggest threat, not just to teen comedies, but comedy movies in general, is Marvel. And I explain exactly why this is here.